Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Women Together Connect. My name is Antoinette, and I am our host. And glad to be together. I'm hoping that my internet connection holds today as I'm in a transit moment, but I'd love to hear where we all are landing in space and time today. So I see many of us are typing into the chat a little hello. So if you type in just where you're coming from, some of us share the weather. I'm in transit from North Carolina back to New York. So I'm in sunny springtime weather. And it's always lovely to just feel a sense of connection to our place and recognizing that where we're coming from may be different both physically and internally, but that we share a lot of commonalities being in this planet Earth together. And really glad to share a bit more about Earth Month. And to have Shona with us, who I know I'll get to introduce in just a few minutes, but we have a deep love and care for the earth. So I see a number of us already saying hello. I see a hello from Tampa Bay, Florida, New York City.
I think we lost Antoinette, or she's frozen.
The overcast Toronto, Miami, Cape Cod, sunny Arlington, Mass. Wonderful. So it's just beautiful to hear where we're all coming from. Wisconsin, a lot of us from the United States today, and or North America. So welcome all from wherever you may be joining us on Zoom and on YouTube. It's wonderful to just be together. So let's land here with a little moment of stillness. I'm coming from a week of silent retreat, so I'm definitely ready for stillness and happy to share a little bit of that. But it's a practice that we do. We do a lot of tiny practices, just a little moment, because often we don't have the space in our lives to go out to a retreat and then, give up a lot of what we've, in the rhythm of our daily lives. So to bring just a tiny practice, a little space of landing, a little space of coming back to the body, coming back to ourselves, can actually enliven us to be in the world again, in even just small ways. So sometimes we do it before a meeting or as we enter into connection with each other, a reminder to connect with ourselves. So we'll do a few tiny practices today, and I'll share a bit more. Most of us I see here already know how we work, but I will remind us after this little tiny practice. So to do that, if you can get your feet on the ground or just find a comfortable seat and perhaps just lower your gaze or close your eyes and just feel a sense of connection to the place where you are, perhaps through the feet or through the seat, maybe through the floor, just feeling a sense of connection to earth. And taking a deep breath. Feeling the inhale in through the feet, through the earth, through the soil. And exhaling, feeling the attention or awareness moving up the feet, up the body, up the back, perhaps up to the crown of the head. Maybe even feeling the space just above the head, the space that we call sky. So just feeling into the inhale and exhale. Noticing where we are today, just what's present for you today. So we'll just give it another moment to just be with the breath and noticing where we are today. And wherever you are, we can reconnect with the screen and with each other. And perhaps if you're in Zoom, you can click on view in the top right corner and go on gallery. And just maybe send a little welcome to all the wonderful people who are here. And if you can go on video, you can do that now and just send a little hello and send a little welcome to each other. Just connecting with ourselves, with each other. And really, this is the purpose of coming together. And if you'd like, you can consider what brought you here. What's my purpose for coming today? So what brought you here? And you can type it directly in the chat and just say perhaps a little intention or what brought you here to today's session. And then I will turn it over to the wonderful Shona in just a moment. I'll try to read a few of these out to just see what's coming up for us, particularly on this topic, or perhaps to see our wonderful Shona Quinn. And let's see, we see reconnecting, tap into the wonderful energy, grounding. I'm here for the wonderful women wisdom, curiosity, a chance to reboot, insight from Shona, listening, remembering to breathe. Yeah. So there are so many reasons that we come together. Wonderful. So I see we've got Susan, a financial educator and a money coach, and a pollinator gardener. I see the connection between money and nature every day. I wanted to hear what Shona has to share about this topic. Suzanne, an island in a chaotic sea of life. Nature is such a great teacher. Yes. So today's session, I'm very excited to introduce Shona and to turn it over to her. I have had the joy of working with Shona for almost 15 years, I would say, at Eileen Fisher. And we really, Shona has pushed forward so much from her own heart and care and wisdom for the company and for the Eileen Fisher community. And I would say Shona is somebody who embodies working for something greater than the organization that she's in, and has really brought us more in connection with ourselves and with each other. She's the senior director of the social consciousness team at Eileen Fisher and is just an absolute wonderful human who I've learned a lot from over the years. And I'm so grateful to be here with, and to Shona, to have you here with us is really, really special, because a lot of what we do is from Women Together. I try to pull from all the company and the culture. To have you here is a very special experience. So over to you, Shona, and thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Antoinette, and the Women Together team, and this community that has been created. It's a very special place, and here on Tuesdays at 12. So I'm very glad to be a part of it. So I'm going to do my best to weave together some ideas connected to women, business, and nature. I'll share a couple thoughts. I'll probably ask you to offer some of your own thoughts through the chat. So I'd love to have you engage. And Antoinette, feel free to jump in if anything needs to be said that isn't being said. And then I think you'll be breaking out, going into small groups, and then we'll come back together. I'm happy to take questions whenever it makes sense in there. So I'm hoping that many of you have done a little journaling before, and maybe you have a little paper and pen close by that you can access. Because I thought I'd start with a question. And the question is, would you take a moment to think about an experience where you felt a connection to nature? An experience where you felt a connection to nature. It can be big or small, whatever is coming top of mind. Just take one moment to write that down. And if you can remember how did that moment make you feel? An experience when you felt connected to nature, and how did it make you feel? And when it feels right, maybe you can put some thoughts into the chat. And now I have to see how I can get the chat so I can see what you're saying. Alive, centered, peaceful, calm, and home. Every morning when I walk into my pollinator garden and wildlife sanctuary, it makes me feel peaceful and hopeful. Renewed, hear my own voice again, away from distractions. Working in my yard helps me focus and concentrate when concentration's needed. That's great. When a fox came to me when I was called to it and told it that it was beautiful, it felt both grounding and totally wonderful. Yeah, I think like the Native Americans talk about, Indigenous folks talk about their totems and the experiences they have with nature and their spirit animals. And it's a special moment, especially when it's a wild one. Thank you so much. I feel a pull in my chest and expansive. That's great. Antoinette talked about tiny practices, and nature helps and nature heals. I know you guys know that if you're here at Women Together, but it can just be such simple things, just breathing in the fresh air, sitting in the sun, particularly in the spring. If you live in the Northeast and you don't get sun as much, it's so wonderful to have the sun. Just quenching your thirst with a glass of water, or admiring the blooming flowers like we can do right now. Fearful of nature's power and control. Yeah, well, we definitely need to respect nature, don't we? Thank you guys for sharing. I'm going to, let me see what I did here. See if I can go to the next page. Okay, so what's going to happen now is I'm just going to do a quick pulse check, and I'm going to take you through 3 slides that have a few stats on them, and then we can chat about them a little bit when I get to the 3rd slide. So the first one is really around women and work. This comes as no surprise, I'm sure. 10% of Fortune 500 companies are led by female CEOs. So that's 50 out of 500. And only about 3 or 4 of them are women of color. And so this is an image of Tashonda Brown Duckett. She is the CEO of TIAA-CREF, which is a teacher's retirement investment fund. And then you'll notice on the other side, 75% of education and healthcare service professionals are women. I don't know if any of these stats would surprise you. I'm just asking you to hold on to them for a minute. Then the next one. What do you think? Most of us are distracted 40%, 47% of our waking life. So for me, I'll pick up my iPad. I'm very intentional. I'm going to read this article about something science-y, probably. And there's an ad that pops up on the side of my very favorite newest product that I was just looking at a few days ago, and it's right there in front of me. And then somehow I end up going down this rabbit hole of iPad world. And wondering, wait, how did that happen? I thought I was reading an article. So that idea of distraction is with us every moment of every day. And it takes a lot of practice to even realize we're distracted, and then to kind of get back to whatever our present task is. Okay, so half the time we're distracted. Then I'd like to just do some stage setting around environmental issues. So, it's not just about getting a laptop, moving from the typewriter to the laptop. The last 50 years have been extremely disruptive to the planet, more than any other time in human history, just these last 50 years. So population has doubled. The economy is 5 to 6 times bigger than it was 50 years ago in my lifetime. Food demand has tripled. Water use has doubled. Fossil fuel use has tripled. The impact is huge, and the shift that needs to happen needs to be even bigger. And so, how do we do that? Well, we've got 3 sets of stats. We've got this idea of women in the workforce. We know we're distracted half of our waking life. And we've got these really big planetary challenges. So what might be the role of women, women in the workforce? And as you can imagine, studies have shown that women are just more compassionate than men. Isn't it interesting that women are the majority of our educators and healthcare workers? And how might that characteristic of being caring and compassionate help our global community in the future, in the near future? How might that characteristic actually influence the business and the financial sector? Isn't it interesting that Ms. Brown is the CEO of a teachers investment fund, taking care of the teachers? So moving from just women to the distraction, what does it mean? What does that distraction mean when CO2 emissions keep rising, along with temperature and extreme weather events? So as business folks, we know that technology and innovation is super important and can play a role in helping to figure this stuff out. But what about us? And what about our mindset and how we think about this work? Are we more disconnected than connected? And how do we cultivate the relationship with self, others, and the natural world in support of this thriving society and planet that we're looking for? How do we do that? And where might our personal values help with this? So, question here for you guys. What are some of your personal values? If you can take a look at that piece of paper again, write down a few notes. When you think about your own personal core values, what comes up for you? And how do you think that might link to a more compassionate and caring world? And if you're open to it, please throw some of those values into the chat so we can see how folks are thinking about this. What are your personal values? And why would it be important to have a short list of values? How is that helpful? So, honesty, integrity, kindness, true self-intuition. kindness, integrity, caring, kindness and appreciation, authenticity, openness, compassion, integrity, curiosity, learning, collaboration. To think has come important to me lately, honestly. Yeah. Thinking. Wisdom. Women with wisdom. It's a special thing. Not just intelligence, but wisdom. Curiosity, humor, kindness, empathetic, stewardship. That's great. And, you know, when we think about why it's important to hold on to some of these values, a couple of reasons are it can help you be more confident in decisions you're making. You come across a challenge and how do I think about this, and where are my values going to help me in making this decision? They can even help define your version of success, or what is your purpose. As you think about these values, how might that lead you to a more purposeful life, or just clarify, crystallize what it is that you want to do? And it helps you even getting through a difficult situation. You know, for me, a version of that is I had a conversation recently that just really threw me off. I was totally decentered by it. And all I could do is the only words that came up for me, and this is after the moment, was love is patient, love is kind. And I just kept saying it, love is patient, love is kind. And it helped. And it wasn't much, but it was like a little chant for me in the moment. And since that experience, I've started to get better at clarifying and strengthening my personal values to make sure I know if I come into a difficult situation, I know where my center is and how to make decisions based on what's happening around me. And so I think also that idea, so we can write out our values, we can put them in our notebook, we can put them on the refrigerator, we can paste them on our computer so they're in front of us. But that is really only half the battle. Then the other half is practicing and expressing them in our daily lives. And what does that look like? How do you put this into practice? How do you put compassion and kindness and all the values that you guys had just listed? How do you embody that and apply them in the hardest moments, difficult conversations? How does kindness come up then? And when you do, which inevitably many of us will, do the absolute opposite of your value, you know, don't beat yourself up. Just take a moment to reflect and try and learn from it and move on. So that's personal values. I'd like to shift now and go to, if I can. Shift to organizational values. So, how might we think about this? How might you think about your personal values and how it could influence the way you show up at work or the way you show up at your community organization event? How might your values show up in connection to a project you're working on or a conversation you have to have with a colleague? And how might your organization's values connect, or how might our organizational values connect to our personal values, or even to the customer's values? So as an individual, we can have our own North Star. We can have a mission and a purpose of what we want to do and achieve in this world. And ideally, those values will help us to get to that destination, to a meaningful life, and like having those meaningful days, or that meaningful life is letting us know what it feels like to be on track. I did well today. I connected to the compassion in one of the most difficult conversations possible. Good for me. And it's the same for business. So the business has a mission. That mission is supported by its values. And the trick is making sure that the organization's daily actions reflect those values. Not easy, because we just went through a list of how our own personal values, we have a lot of different personal values. Everyone's different. And you go into an organization, and in order to move that ship or whatever it is in the right direction, everybody has to be thinking the same way. And what does that look like? So I'm just going to give you one example and then wrap it up and give you some thoughts to think about as you head into just the dialogue with each other. So this example is on the left side, you see an aspect of how you might go about designing, creating a business. And of course, there's always what's in the center. What is the product or the idea, the service that you're creating? And do you have an interested customer for that? And do you have the ability to make some kind of profit for that? And do you need a team, like human resources? What does the operations look like? What is your legal entity going to be? Are you incorporated? And what does the ownership structure look like? So that's one way. And then if you look on the right side, you might think about an organization through a values lens. So you can adjust aspects of the business design. So that idea, it's whether it's a product or a service, is it sustainable? Is it circular by design? And do you have a values-based customer that's willing to buy that product? And when profits start coming in, how do you decide how to allocate those funds? How much profit is enough? People and culture, instead of humans just being that resource that's getting us through, how do we develop a community that's strong and resilient even through the tough times? As far as operations are concerned, how do we create a more collaborative way or way of thinking, systems thinking? So it's not just about the shareholder, it's about all the stakeholders, those in the supply chain, in the communities, in the for the customer. And then the last two that I just want to mention is the ownership structure we mentioned earlier. What if it's employee owned or partially employee owned? How might that help in the resiliency of a business? And what if the legal entity was a benefit corporation? So you weren't just focused on the profitability of the company, but you were also, you needed to be connected to the values of the environment and social impact. So just, business, how it's structured and where you can start to become that architect of what it might look like, and where in your sphere of influence might you adjust it to create something that may be more mission driven. Okay, and this is the last slide. I'll just mention two things. One, this is a visual that people refer to as nested dependencies. So we're all connected, we're all in relationship, and we can see ourselves as separate, but we also need to see ourselves as being in relationship to each other and to the planet. So as we're thinking about that, what are some ways we can practice being in relationship with ourselves, with others, and the natural world to create a more connected and balanced society and planet? What might that look like? And the only, as part of my practice, I've come across work being done by Richard Davidson. He has a center called Center of Healthy Minds out in Madison, Wisconsin, and they have an app called the Healthy Minds app. And I'll just give a plug to that. If you're interested in kind of understanding the values and purpose and where you might go with that in an intentional way, I think their program is pretty interesting. And I know there are a lot of apps out there and a lot of interesting things that are happening in the world. This was just one that for me was interesting to try out. So I'm going to stop there and I guess pass it over to Antoinette. I'm not paying attention to time too much, but I think you're going to go and connect for a little bit about some of the questions that came up, and then we'll get back together.
Thank you, Shona. I really love this question that you just closed this piece with. That what are some of the practices that can bring us more in connection with ourselves, each other, and the natural world, and this idea of nested interdependency. So I wonder if, just being with for a moment, what touched us from all of what we just heard from Shona. And we just bring, maybe just for a moment, our attention to that. You can just close your eyes or lower your gaze and just notice what touched you. And then just considering what practices can we use to really connect with this nested interdependency, with this connection of my own values, my own life, and how it connects to all the other parts of how I connect with the world. I think often we compartmentalize, this is my work over here, and this is, how I live my life over here. And what Shona, you just shared so beautifully is the way that these are all interconnected, and that when I have these personal values, it can show up in the rest of my life. So, I really, deeply appreciate your sharing with us. And Shona, we'll come back to some Q&A with you, and thank you for making time for that. But now we'll just turn to each other and discuss, just sharing in our connection, what came up for you, what touched you, and what practices might you use to make this bridge between my individual values and the world around me. So we'll introduce ourselves as we go into the breakout. Shona, did you want to add something?
I was just going to, you said something. Thanks, Antoinette, for seeing my mouth gape open for a second. But what it reminded me of is we wear hats. We wear our business executive hat. And, that's us making sure we're getting our return on investment and we're financially sound organization. And we know how to do that. We've been trained in school how to do that. And we come home and we may put on our parent hat. And that's a very different hat. And we may go on the weekend to a rally or something and put on our civic engagement hat. And so the idea here is with this integration piece is how do we just wear one hat and be that whole person that we are and be able to come into the space as we are um, in a, a way that feels right.
Thank you, Shona. A lot of us put in this word integrity, and what you share here is just that's, you know, being a whole person and showing up with integrity in our lives and our work. So let's give maybe 12 minutes. No, 40, 50, 55. No, we could do 15 minutes. I think that's fine. 15 minutes for just connecting with each other. Share your name, where you're coming from, what touched you, or what practice you might share. And we'll be back in 15 minutes. Zoom, if you're on YouTube, thank you so much for joining, and I hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you back next week. So enjoy the time together, and we'll see you back in 15 minutes.